So let's get into it. We have an awesome guest with us today, KIMY Brennan. What's up, sis?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi. I'm so happy that you're here, girl.
Me too.
We're going to get into all the things.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Girl, you got a story the people need to hear.
I guess so.
Yes. So one of the things that I've been asking every woman, what's a leadership woe that you're facing? And I already know what I really want to hear about. Now
she's doing like when people get invited, like to
I'm
these
ready.
interviews, and the person already knows the question's coming. It's coming.
Oh, it's coming because we're gonna spill the tea. So I follow you on TikTok and I love what you're doing. You are such a great example. I've watched you create some videos in your room on Instagram like 3 years ago, like kind of just fumbling through it. And now you're a whole influencer. And if I would want anyone to be an influencer, I would want you to be an influencer. You are a dope role model, especially for youth. So thank you so much for what you're doing and all the time it takes to put together that content. Already know, girl. So anyway, you're doing all this on social media, on TikTok, and recently there was a troll that came after you. Why did she come after you?
Oh my goodness. So I posted on TikTok. It was this trend that was going along, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It's probably still up, so you can go and check it out. But I had posted just the quote, "Oh, so you want to be a pastor? You can't because you're a woman." And then it was basically like, "Oh, well, too bad. Like, I'm just going to do it anyway, right?" And that was just to be like empowering rather than to be kind of like divisive in any way. It was supposed to be empowering for young women to see like, hey, you know what? I'm with you in the struggle of wanting to be a woman leader when so many other people just don't encourage that, right? So I posted it and it kind of started blowing up a little bit. I mean, I'm not viral or anything like that in any means, but it started to blow up a little bit. And I had this girl who apparently is a Christian influencer on TikTok. And she just started to comment on these things and bring up scripture and like, hey, you can't preach. You can't. The only thing you're called to is like children's ministry or like things like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm trying to be respectful in that. My students brought it up to me because they were like, do you know who that is? I was like, no, some girl on TikTok, and they're like, yeah, I follow her. Like I watch her content. I repost her content and all this stuff. And I was like, well, that's how she acts. So I don't know why you're still following her. And they were like, all right, unfollow, right? But in that moment of just conversation with them, some of what they began to share with me was, oh yeah, like I started to notice, she said, oh, Christian TikTok's toxic. And so I'm leaving it. And I was like, yeah, maybe because of some of those comments, right? Instead of being a united front of Christians on TikTok, we're putting out content and then tearing each other down. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? So yeah, I got to have some really good conversations based around that. And someone kind of popped up on my TikTok and was defending me in a lot of ways. And I was like, oh yes, let's go. That was meaningful to me. And then kind of found out she was connected to UIWI and Cherie.
No, wait, I didn't connected to me.
Yeah, Ashley.
Oh, you were telling Ashley who was your advocate. I thought you were talking about the troll. I'm like, I don't know the troll.
No.
I don't have anything to do with the troll.
No, she came up and she started, started defending and talking about judges and all this stuff. And I was like, thank you, sis.
Come on.
And I spoke very directly to this girl who was trying to call me out. And I was like, hey, listen, I don't argue on social media. So if you do want to have a conversation, like DM me, we'll talk. Well, I'll give you my number. Shoot, like, we'll FaceTime or something. And needless to say, I did not get a DM. I did not get a response.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I landed. And some of the, if I can say even like the leadership woe in that is just this lack of respect for women, whether it be on a social platform or it be on a literal platform, right? While you're preaching in a church, you have these people who are either silently judging or they're already disqualifying you before you speak.
Right.
They're already coming up with these ideas of why you're not qualified to talk to me. And so that's kind of what that brought up for me in a lot of ways.
Sis, so I brought you to this table with my beautiful co-host, Pastor Noemi, because I wanted to affirm you because UIWI is all about developing urban leaders and specifically women like you who have been in the trenches, being a role model to young people, really leading, strong in your community. So when I heard about this story, I was like, okay, let me go get my girl. Let me make sure she's okay. And let me go ahead and affirm that women, first of all, they can lead.
Yes.
and women can preach, and women can pastor. But I don't need to tell y'all why. But Pastor Naomi, take it away. What do you say about all this?
Well, I think first of all, I'd like to ask you, Kimmy, like, at what age or when did you actually realize, like, this is a calling on my life? Like, I want to serve Jesus this way. Like, I want to lead others. I want to preach the gospel. When did this happen in your life?
I was 13.
Yeah, I was about the same age. I think I was like 12 or 13 when I had this realization, like, God is calling me to serve him and to be a preacher of the gospel, you know? That's amazing. Like, how did the people around you respond to that initially?
Without outing too many people, it was an interesting response because the church that I was at before I came to the church I'm at now was a pretty big church, and I would make mention of, hey, I really want to lead or I want to do this, and it was like, that's nice. But there wasn't really a lot of backing or a lot of support in those areas. There were, the few and the proud who kind of came alongside of me and said, we believe in you. But the two people who stick out to me are my family members, my brother-in-law and my sister, who really just said, we believe in you, and so we're going to get you the assessments. We're going to talk to you about the APEST. We're going to do all those things. But from an outside perspective, besides my family, there wasn't much support.
Wow. I'm asking this because, like, I grew up in a primarily Spanish-speaking church community here in LA. And when I came to realize God was calling me to ministry and that I would be somebody who would speak or preach the gospel in front of both male and female, I was super affirmed by the leadership of the church. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to connect with people outside of the Latino community that I realized this is an issue for people. And it was completely confusing to me because, the Latino community in some ways may have they may be known for machismo or for, being patriarchal, but when it came to ministry, for some apparent reason, the church that I was in was all about females leading as well. And so that was a gift to my youth and to those early formative years of faith and leadership. But that's not the case
Right.
in a lot of churches. And I've learned that even more so now across the US and even around the world. But it's so important that we as leaders in this generation keep our eyes and ears open for these young people who are responding to God's call.
Yes.
And I do feel that in so many ways, the church should be leading the conversation of equality in this space. I feel like in many ways we have followed the world's lead on so many things that the church should have led. And this is just one as well. Like, we ought to be celebrating the gifts of God in his daughters and the voice that he gives and the word that he brings to the body through women and through young girls as yourself, which you are a young woman, but you're just a baby girl and you're beautiful. But I'm so proud of the fact that there's a deep conviction in you about what you're called to do. And so, we want to ask you some questions here, and I know that Cherie wants to share some questions about leadership and some of the influences in your life. So take it away, my sister.
But before we do that, hold on, so Kimmy, you shared who affirmed. You said your brother-in-law, right? Your sister.
Yes.
Pastor Naomi, who told you could do what you're doing now?
You know what? It was my youth pastor. He was amazing.
Okay.
Like, I was probably 13 years old the first time he had me preach at youth group. He said, hey, guess what? Next week you're preaching. I was like, what? He's like, come ready.
Yes.
He didn't even look at my notes. He just let me have the mic. And he was just like, share the scripture and share what God put in your heart. And it was just like shocking to me that he would hand the mic over to me that way. And even moving forward from that point on, when I was in high school, I started a Bible club. And literally in that Bible club, I had teachers and people who were saying, like, you shouldn't be leading a club. I remember listening to Christian radio at that age and hearing these two men converse about how women should not be leading in the church. So I literally called the radio station.
Awesome.
Yes, you did.
I sure did. And I said, hey, like, I want to start a Bible club in my school, and I want to be able to preach Jesus to everybody who comes to the school. Are you telling me I could only speak to the girls in the school? What's going on?
Wow.
And their response, think about it. These two grown men have the opportunity to speak into a young woman's destiny who's going to share the gospel in a space where it's absent. And their response was, well, as long as there's not a male leader, you can lead.
Oh, no.
Is that painful or what?
It's painful.
I was glad that I went back to my youth pastor and I told him what the radio men said.
Yeah.
And he's like, do not listen to that.
Yes.
And so it was very encouraging to me to have, a man of color, affirm the calling on my life and also open a path that would give me the opportunity to begin to practice the gift that God had given me.
That's so good.
So one of the things that I know is that what's hysterical is historical. So your troll, somebody told her a lie, and she's carrying that forward.
Yeah, she is.
And that's sad, right?
Yeah.
Because she needs to be released from that to understand her leadership potential,
Yep.
just like you have. All right, so let's get past the troll and the lies of women who, aren't able to lead, aren't able to preach. Let's get past that because we are affirming, yes, you can.
Yes.
Now, KIMY, I want to hear about what are you doing right now in your leadership journey that is energizing you? It is just giving you life.
Wow, that is a great question. I think right now, the past couple of months, I have just been taking hold of the grace that comes along with ministering. Sometimes God gives you a word to share, and sometimes you have a word in your head and you're like, is this from God? I don't know. Should I share it? Should I not? Right? And God is like, man, I'm present with you at all times.
Yeah.
And so that's been really helpful for me. I've been just meeting people randomly on the streets and at this coffee shop I go to and like everywhere. And they'll just say, I feel like I can tell you my life right now. And they'll just spill it all out. And from there, I get to say, let me pray with you. Let me divulge some wisdom that God is giving me to give to you right now. And that has been fueling me up every day, every time I meet somebody, because I'm reminded that I'm not just used inside of the church, but I'm used outside of the church. And in any way that I say yes to God, and I say, yes, you can use me on TikTok, you can use me on Instagram, you can use me, wherever you want, at Winco, at these grocery stores, right? Then he'll use you there. And so that's been really affirming for me, just to remember that God will continue to use me, that there's grace, even when I mess up and I don't carry the weight well, right? Even when God's called me to do something and I'm like, yeah, and then I don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of those spaces, God is giving grace. And it's just been uplifting and energizing to meet new people, to be that evangelist that he's called me to be, and not be afraid of messing up or even of somebody, like we said, trolling, or somebody coming up and saying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This isn't right. So it's been really energizing for me lately.
So the leadership journey for especially your generation is very complex because it isn't just at a church.
Right.
It is also at the coffee shop. But now we have this whole ecosystem of social media, which is a huge place to minister to people, which is a huge place to shepherd people through really hard things. Like it could get really, really deep, really, really fast, sis. So let me ask you, this will be the last question. Who's a woman who has shaped your leadership journey, and how are you carrying her leadership, her legacy forward?
That is a great question. I'm going to brag on one of my pastors really quick.
All right, let's go.
Pastor Deb Walkemeyer.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We know that name.
Yes.
I love her.
She is incredible.
She's like out there in Compton planting gardens, right?
Yeah, just, doing her thing.
Just,
And then she
rolling
goes
up.
skiing, and then she's skiing.
Yeah.
And then does she skydive?
yeah.
She does. She's crazy. Yes.
She probably
Okay.
does. I love her. One of the things that when I came to the church I'm at now, Light and Life, one of the things that I hadn't seen done well in previous circumstances was women in leadership. And so, immediately there's a woman on stage and I'm looking to her to see, how do I respond? How do I react? And unfortunately as well, there were times when I had known pastors' wives, specifically pastors' wives, who, you also call pastor and things like that. But I had known them, and they kind of all were the same to me in the sense that they were projecting this image constantly. And so I was like, I'm not like any of you. How am I going to find my place, right?
Yeah, sis.
How am I going to find my place when I'm not all put together? My hair's frizzy and crazy, and I want to go skydiving, like, these things. But who's showing me that that's a possibility, that you can be in leadership and you can still be yourself?
Right.
That's something that Pastor Deb has showed me over the years, that when she walks into a room, when she was seated at tables that were primarily male-centric, she wasn't, broing herself up to go in there or like manning herself up. She was still her. and she carried her everywhere she went. She's I'm just gonna throw her out there. She's a 7 wing 8 on the Enneagram, and so am I. And so for me, I was like, this is the perfect moment to look up to somebody and see how they're carrying themselves into every circumstance.
Yeah. So would you say that she is helping you to really carry yourself, your whole self, all of who you are forward as a leader?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been interesting because I have been saying to our staff at UIWI that this generation of women, you're not gonna man up and bro up. Right. You're like, I want to be 100% feminine. I want to be all girl. I want to be all me, and I will not all of a sudden try to be a man to sit at the table. You're just gonna have to deal with my femininity.
Yes.
And I love that because we need that, because I've seen a generation, you may have seen a generation of women who have conformed to being masculine for the sake of trying to fit in. It wasn't because they carried masculine energy. It was just because they were like, the only role models they had were men.
Right.
And so they lost some of their whole identity.
Yeah.
And it does damage to your soul anytime you're trying to be something that you're not anyway. So I'm excited that I'm hearing you say that. And I think that is going to be what sets you apart. I think that's what already I'm seeing is setting you apart, girl. I've seen you on the floor doing video at the church. I've seen you out with the kids at the church. I've seen you driving vans with the church. I've seen you in coffee shops. I've seen you on TikTok. Girl, you are leading in every space. You are dominating. I am so proud of you. So proud of you. So thank you so much for just sharing with us a little bit of your journey. Where can people follow you?
You can follow me anywhere.
All right.
Instagram, TikTok, at KIMY BRENNEN, KIMY. No double M, no I.
All right. Follow this girl. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Ladies, are you looking to level up your leadership? Well, we want you to check out UIWI's Next Level Leadership Coaching. It is available to you. We will match you with a one-on-one coach. For more information, go ahead and check out our website at uywi.org.